Hey everyone, welcome to another episode in my home of the other side of addiction. We are still searching for a new recording studio. It takes a little bit of time. We just want to make sure that we find the right one. Guys, thank you so much for your patience and for understanding. Man, today we've got a really great topic on today's show. We're going to be talking about surrender and acceptance. And our guest, Aaron, today is going to be talking about that. Aaron, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us.
That's a pleasure.
And I just want to give my thank you right now to Kirk and Jimmy for introducing us. That's one of the reasons why you're on this show. So thank you guys so much for connecting Aaron and I. And I'm definitely looking forward to hearing what Aaron has to share with us. So Aaron, gosh, but I know a little bit about you, and I was going through your bio this morning, and like a handful of our guests, not all of them, just about a handful, your family basically was plagued with addiction. Is that correct?
That is for sure. Yep.
And it all started with your mom and dad, or was it even before then?
I think there's a line of before them too. Especially on my mom's side. But for the most part, I was born in '93. That makes me 30 years old. And my mom and dad had 3 kids, me being one of them, and my father was pretty strung out on, meth for a long time. My mom was doing drugs too, and my dad actually, I'm the youngest boy. My dad committed suicide when I was 8 months old. He was so far gone that he couldn't, I don't know. I've never been, but he was so far gone that he just lost it, So that was the start of my, addiction experience, just a young baby, and my mom obviously took it pretty hard. And most of my whole childhood was, just growing up in a party, you know what I mean? My mom, she did her best to raise us kids, she never lost custody of us, which was great. But, there's a handful of times maybe, we shouldn't have been in the house, but she did her best. She partied like an animal, and I grew up kind of thinking that was the way of life. I didn't really, I seen my mom do it. My dad died from it. My sister was doing it too, partying with my mom, older. And that's just kind of how I grew up. And I remember recently in recovery, someone asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a party animal. When I was a kid, I was looking up to my mom, and that's what she did. So I wanted to get high,
Yeah.
And people think that is pretty crazy, but it's what I knew,
Well, and how could you know anything else, right, Aaron? We've
right.
had guests on our show who grow up in the gang life, right? And
yeah, exactly.
They just figured, they remember age 5, 6, 7 years old. Basically even doing drugs with their parents and seeing family members going in and out of prison and jail and all kinds of chaos, basically, right? But for them, that's how they thought life was. They didn't know that there was anything different because that's just what they're around.
Correct. And feeding on that, I had my first sip of alcohol at 9 years old, some wine, and it was a special occasion. And my mom's like, oh, it's a special occasion. Everybody drinks, that includes you. And I was like, sweet, finally, it's like I get to hang out with big kids. Yeah. So that, I mean, that was the start of it. And I remember just that feeling off, that one glass of wine, like almost it felt like I was feeding a void, inside of me. Like I was missing something.
Yeah.
And that kickstarted it. I didn't really start getting into addiction's been present in my life. Now that I'm in recovery, I see, video games being addicting, food being addicting, things like that. Women. I could see the the can't think of what I'm trying to say, but
You can just see, you can see how widespread addiction is, right? Because it's basically,
yeah,
it's really not just drugs and alcohol, right? And I had a friend, someone say the other day, all of us are addicts, and he held up his phone,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah. The
we
phone's a
are
killer.
all on this damn thing constantly anymore.
Yep, that is true. So the story kind of continuing a little bit, when I was 15 years old, I had started partying quite a bit before that, on a regular basis, mostly weekends, but I was drinking and smoking some weed, here and there, and partying with friends. And when I was 15, I getting back to being addicted to women, I had a kid at 15. That was a surprise, but I didn't want to be like my dad, and not help raise his kids, so I did the best I could. I stepped up. I dropped out of high school, and I got a job, and I started working, and I was working for a roofing company, and we were roofing 7 days a week. And every night after work, we would, stop at the liquor store, and he's like, "Oh, you're a man now, you got a kid, you dropped out of school." And I didn't realize it at the time, but that's when it all started for me. I was drinking 7 days a week. I don't know when it got out of control, but when I was 18, my mom died from a fentanyl overdose.
Oh no.
And that sent me in a pretty big spiral. I had kind of messed around with some other drugs, but I really started hitting the pills pretty hard. And I don't remember a lot of everything, you know what I mean? From then on, I kind of dabbled around with everything. And then I found the devil, meth. Well, the reason my dad committed suicide, I found meth, and I don't know, I was probably 23-ish or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just that was a bad downhill spiral. My life came unmanageable, more unmanageable than it already was. And it was pretty miserable. I got clean at 26 years old, and my life has only changed since then,
Yeah. Can I ask you a question here? And do you feel, I mean, I know you really didn't have an opportunity, right, to know your father.
Correct.
And you grew up with your mom partying, and you said that pretty much that's what you wanted to be when you grew up, was a big time partier. Do you feel like there was some like an abandon issues, and then also probably more so once your mom passed? I mean, you had lost a dad that you didn't even get to know, and then really you lost your mom at such a young age also. All right, are you back?
I am.
All
Yeah,
right.
you froze up on us.
Yeah, we lost you there for a second. I don't know if you heard my question. Did you hear my question at all?
No, I just heard your father grew up without a father.
Okay, so a question for you. Do you feel like there was you had some abandonment issues? Because again, you lost your father at such an early age, which you never really knew, right? However, you grew up without a father, or at least your blood father, and then having a mom that was partying all the time, and you wanted to grow up to be a partier just like she was, which we look up to our parents, right? I can see why you would want to grow up to be that type of person. But you said you lost your mom at the age of 15. And
18.
what time? 18?
Yeah, I was 18 when I
Oh,
lost
18.
her.
So I couldn't imagine. I mean, that's still fairly young, right? To be losing a mom, someone that was there with you for the 18 years of your life. I mean, do you feel like that also kind of started putting some trauma inside you that you didn't realize that was there?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I grew up the youngest kid. Two sisters. My middle sister grew up in the same household. Helped raise me for the most part. My mom worked two jobs, and um, if she wasn't working, she was partying. And my older sister got out of the house as soon as she could. Um, you know, because she seen the disaster going on inside the house. So that's another layer of abandonment I've felt. My dad, my mom, I felt has abandoned me most of my life. I mean, she just cared more about partying than me. And then, my oldest sister left the house when she turned 17, and moved to Germany. And I it was just like, now looking back at it, working my, 12-step program, I felt so abandoned. It was a huge part of trauma for me.
Yeah. Gosh, and to move to Germany, I mean, that's just not like you can, jump on the plane and fly across the United States, right? I mean,
Yeah.
have a 3 or 4 hour flight and you're there to see your sister again. Have you and your sister gotten a relationship now that you are both adults?
Yeah. So that's funny you should ask that. It took a long time. She lives in California now. And I got to visit her with my oldest son that I had when I was 15. I got to visit her um, a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, after I got clean and everything. And I got to express to her, like, how much she didn't realize the abandonment I felt, from her. And, we gained a really strong relationship in the last 4 years. We were closer than we've ever been, because I was a young kid when she moved out. I think I was like 10 or 11, right around that age when she moved out. So, like, we kept in contact throughout the years, but man, I was pissed at her. I was like, you just left us, with this drug addict. Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't.
right.
But now I've been able to express myself to her and, tell her how I feel, and not in a way that makes her feel bad. Just like, I didn't know what was going on at that age, and we're closer now than we've ever been, and it's a beautiful thing.
It goes to show, Aaron, the blessings that come out of tragedy, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there really are so many blessings that come out of things, and especially when you're in the recovery. You
yeah,
put that foot forward for the very first time, and it's scary as hell. I can
hmm,
remember my wife saying that she's scared to death not to be able to have a drink ever again the rest of her life. Right? I mean, it
absolutely.
was fearful for her. Now she sees alcohol and she almost wants to puke,
Yeah,
but the
yeah,
blessing that's come out of it, now she's a certified peer support specialist. So now she's actually out there helping other people in their journey.
yeah, and that's where I see a blessing for myself too in recovery. I love just telling my story and hope it hits somebody's heart, and if I can just save one person, if it's one person in the next 30, 40 years until I die, I'll be so grateful for that. Hopefully it's many more, right?
Right.
But if I could just help be that person, that helps save one person, I'll be so happy because someone saved my life. You know what I mean? And I owe that to recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. I owe a ton to the recovery community as well. I
Right.
really do. We're doing an event here on Saturday, April 15th, and it's called the Healing Utah Success Summit. And last year when I spoke, I shared my wife's story. And a good friend of mine who's an executive director for one of the recovery centers here sat down with me and he's like, Al, stop telling your wife's story, start telling your own. You'll
Right.
be more powerful doing that. Your message
Mhm.
will be more powerful is what I'm trying to say. And I
Yeah.
took his advice. And so this afternoon I was sitting here writing things down and it was kind of crazy because I probably sat here at my desk for 10 minutes and I'm like, oh my gosh, where do I start this? Because I want it to be inspirational too.
Right.
And I asked God a day or so ago when I was saying my prayers, I'm like, please help me, please direct me in the right direction. And it's so crazy because after about 10 minutes, all of a sudden something hit. And I mean, I just started writing and
Mhm.
I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to leave the book because I was afraid that if I left, I had to go to the bathroom so freaking bad. And I didn't want to get up and go to the bathroom because I wanted to continue writing this. And
Yeah.
it's because I want to be like what you're saying, Aaron. Everything I've gone through with my addiction, everything my wife's gone through and hers, everything we both went through together, as well as a lot of our guests like yourself. I don't know how many of us and how many of them have said, if I can help one person, it was all worth it.
Yep.
Just one. So we're all in that same boat, right? We all just want to put our hand out and go, I know what you're going through. Let me help you through that journey because we can't do it alone, right?
Right. Absolutely.
We
I've
need
tried that before.
yeah. Yeah, my wife did too. She tried many times. She's like, I don't need a
Yep.
rehab. I can do this on my own. Yeah, well, that didn't go very well.
Yep. Yeah. I always joke when I go to rehabs and talk, like um, we've all tried our work in our own program, getting to our topic here, it's time to surrender and let someone help you, you
Yeah.
know. Because I've tried the maintenance, marijuana maintenance program, just drinking alcohol program, just smoking meth program. None of them worked for me.
Yeah.
And once I surrendered, and accepted I had an issue, my life turned around.
Well, and that's usually what
That's
it takes, is that
yeah,
surrender.
and it's difficult, especially. I wouldn't say it's any more or less difficult for men or women, but in my personal experience, my ego was so big and I'm such a man, and to just surrender everything to the higher power, and to the recovery life was difficult for me. I didn't want to admit I had a problem. I grew up in a household that if you you know if you surrendered, that was a sign of weakness. If you cried, that was weak. If you whatever, that's all weakness. And so I kind of grew up in that, and I'm not blaming anybody. At a certain point, right from wrong and what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. And I like that you said that, Aaron, that if we cried, we're weak. If we surrender, we're looked at as weak or not manly
Mhm.
enough, and with no blame, like you said,
Right.
our parents put that into us because that's what was put into them, right?
Right.
They're just going off the same mold that they were molded from.
Exactly.
And I have really, really paid attention a lot the past few years and realized all of society is that way.
Yep.
Suicide for men, I think from the age of 25 up to 55 or 58, something like that, is skyrocketing. And it's because we're looked at as manly men. We're not supposed to feel depressed. We're not supposed to cry. We're not supposed to show our emotions. And I've seen that with a lot of our guests. And I was brought up that exact same way. I don't know how many times I was told, if you cry, I'll give you a reason to cry. And it's
Yep,
like,
I've heard
you
the
don't want
same
me to
word.
cry, but you're going to give me a reason to, right? Well, if I'm crying
Yeah,
right now, there's a reason why I'm crying right now. So I never
right.
could understand that as I got older. And society has got us so molded that we're afraid to show our emotions, and our emotions, God gave them to us. We're supposed to
Yep,
experience all the emotions that we have inside of us for a reason, and that's to help us grow and help us understand. But again, society
yep,
shuns on that. Don't you dare. You're a man, pull your big boy britches up and
yeah,
knock it off, right?
yep. And it's really easy to, use drugs and alcohol um, to hide those emotions, and bury them deep. And, I think that's what I did most of my life, is that's what I was hiding from. One of my hardest things about recovery was trying to, oh my gosh, these dogs. I mean,
It's all right. I can't hear them on my end.
okay. Recovery had the hardest thing for me in recovery was to feel, to feel feelings. That was difficult for me. I suffered through that in my first year and still now, like to just deal with those emotions for the first time ever and not put a lick on it, that was hard for me. But now that I do it, um, it's so much better. I can get through things and it's just beautiful. I love recovery so much.
Yeah. I've heard that so flipping many times. And I don't know if you know my story. I actually just started opening up about my cocaine and alcohol use for 8 years. I hid it. I would talk just little teeny bits of it here and there, but I really didn't share
Right.
my whole story, and I lost a job
Yeah.
of 24 years because of it. And I didn't look at myself as an addict, right? Because I only did it every Friday and Saturday night. I didn't do it during the week.
Yeah.
And I've had people call BS on that. And I'm like, no, I'm serious. I was dedicated to my job. I mean, my wife will tell you, I was dedicated to my job. I went in whether I had 101 temperature, I was puking, I went to work because that's what was
Yeah.
ingrained in me. And, I'd work 12, 13, 14 hours a day until Friday hit. And then, man, it was 8 hours. I was punching out at 3 o'clock, calling my dude up, meet me, grabbing my stuff, go get some booze, go home, do a couple lines, drink a few drinks, go out, start doing my
Yeah.
yard work. But see, I wasn't an addict, right?
Right.
And it took until this January, for me to finally start sharing my story. And I've really started doing some searching, thinking I did what I did because of the stress I had at work. However, the times when I'm home alone and I'm really thinking about things, holy crap, Aaron, I was covering up so much, right?
Right.
There was a
And
lot.
who knows, right? Who knows what, you mentioned, going to work and work, work, work. For me, even now, today in recovery, I can work too much. I'm addicted to work
Yeah,
and money. And, I might be in recovery from drugs, but I still have to work on, discipline from other things in my life. And, sometimes people don't even realize they have an addiction, but they got their phone in their hand and they're going to work 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's like, if does it make your life unmanageable? Or that's the way I try to judge it for me. As if anything that makes my life unmanageable, I probably need to surrender to my higher power, and accept that it's making my life unmanageable, and I got a problem with it. I can have too much coffee in one day.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're 100% right. I was interviewing a gal out of Colorado well over a year ago when we were first starting our podcast. And she was actually sharing her battle with addiction. And I can't remember what the subject that we were talking about. And all of a sudden she got silent. And I was watching her eyes, and I could see her eyes kind of going to the left and going to the right, looking up, right? Which we're searching for things when we're doing that. And then she goes, "Oh my gosh, Al, I didn't realize this till now." She goes, "I'm a workaholic." I mean, seriously,
Yep.
she focuses everything. So all the effort she put into her other addiction, she got out of it, but then she put that into a whole different addiction. Now,
Yeah.
is work a little more of is it healthier addiction? Maybe, yeah, but also maybe not, right? Because the stress behind it and what you're feeling, it's still not doing your self-care, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Like I judge it by, like, am I putting things before my family to do this? Like, I recently started a business, a construction company, and I did once before in my active addiction, too, and I ran that thing into the ground. But I was working, back then I would work 12-hour days, 7 days a week, um, and then somewhere along when I started my company back up recently, I promised myself, like, I'm not going to let this company become my life. I have a family, I have other things, I have recovery. That's the most important thing in my life. And it's easy for me to get wrapped up in work, come home, work on my work, and, don't go to 12-step meetings because I'm too busy working, and what I've learned, from watching other people mostly, but anything I put before my recovery, I will lose, um, and without my recovery, I don't have anything anyway. If I'm not clean, I don't have kids in my life. I don't have a wife. I don't have a job. All I have is drugs. So
Yeah.
it's easy to it. It's a never, because I lost the desire to use drugs a couple years ago. Like, that desire is gone, but it's easy to get wrapped into my thinking. Your stinking thinking. That's what I call it. Because I believe this is a thought. It's my own thinking got me to where I'm at. Um, first thought wrong type thing. My first thought is I'm sad, let's pick up drugs.
Yeah.
I'm mad, let's pick up drugs. I'm happy, let's pick up. So I got to be careful of protecting my recovery with my life, and my family accepts that too, which is really good.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you got a great support system too, that they do understand. And yeah, we all finally come, well, not all of us, because there are some that don't make it, unfortunately, but
Yeah.
there are some of us that finally realize, man, it's time to put down that shovel, because all it's doing is
Yeah.
creating more chaos in my life, right? I've got a good
Yep.
friend who his name's Curtis Marsh. He's a good friend of mine. We met at a men's group a couple years ago, which is kind of crazy. And we just started talking because we both like cowboy boots, and we were both talking about our cowboy boots, right? And
Yeah.
we just become really good friends. And he does a talk called Rise Above the Chaos. And he caused so much chaos in his life, and everywhere he went, that's what his nickname was Chaos.
Yeah.
No, and he just recently got married and to a gal that he knew in high school, and she was pretty standoffish at first. She's like, "Do I want to get in a relationship whose guy's nickname is Chaos?" And he was upfront and
Yeah.
honest with her about how his life used to be. And he did exactly what we said this title of the show was, right? He finally surrendered. and he talked about his ego. I mean, this guy was making bank. He tells the story of he was getting arrested once, and the bailiffs were he was at the court and they were putting the handcuffs on him, and he basically told the bailiffs, he's like something about, watch where you put your effing hands, because the Rolex that's on my wrist is worth more than either one of you make in a year.
Yeah.
That's how his ego was. And I mean, he just thought
Yeah.
he deserved, I mean, he was above everyone else. But that's just how he was. Now you see this guy and who he is as an individual, and you're going, there's no way that was you, right? Because you just see this like
Yeah.
teddy bear. I mean,
Yeah.
kind of like yourself,
Yeah.
right? You're just like this teddy bear. You're just so calm and easygoing. And of course, I don't get to see you in your everyday life, but your demeanor right now is just so chilled. And you've been clean for 4 years now, if I'm not mistaken, right? So
4 years. Yep.
4 years, so long-term recovery, man, it changes your life in so many different ways, but in the good, right? You don't always have to be jumping in
Yeah.
your vehicle and looking in your rearview mirror to see if there's a cop following you or whatever it may be.
Yeah. Yeah, recovery. It's funny. I was just at a buddy of mine's house today, and him and his wife are heading to Wisconsin for a trip, and they asked me if I'd come feed their bird and their fish for them while they're gone. And I laughed a little, and I'm like, oh, what's so funny? They know a little bit about my story, and I said, man, 5 years ago, you would have never asked me to do this. It's funny. And they just amazed by my story. They're not addicts themselves, and they're just like, they don't see me as that person who I am or used to be,
Yeah.
And it's nice to get into recovery and meet people that are healthy to be around, and it's really funny to see their reaction, when they talk about robbing and stealing joints, and they're like, that's you, because I'm a lot different than I was 4 years ago, I wasn't trusted at people's houses, that's why I love recovery. Everyone said, keep coming back, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And my whole life going back to abandonment, nobody wanted me to come back to anything. They stay gone. We don't want you around here. So recovery was my home, and 12-step programs really helped save my life, and I wouldn't be sitting here today without them. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that and your higher power, you did mention too that you surrendered and you gave your life up to a higher power. And we talk about that quite a bit on a lot of our shows, and we want our listeners to understand it, and our really good people, our listeners who follow us all the time. It's not religion that we talk about. It's something more. It's
Right.
spirituality. And even if you are not a believer of a higher power, for those that are in recovery right now and just starting, believe in something that's greater than you, right? I mean, my wife said she went to an event once and this guy got up and said he didn't believe in God, but his higher power was his goldfish.
Hey, everybody needs something.
Right?
When I first got into recovery, I didn't believe in higher power of any kind. That was not something I blamed my higher power for everything that's happened. Like, why would you, but when I first got into recovery, someone told me, you better find something that works for you. You know what I mean? And I think it's important that people in recovery know, because a lot of us do come in here spiritually broken. And I think it's important that people that are spiritually broken understand that you got to find something. If it's the river next door to your house, like if that's your higher power, if it helps you, go to that river when you're feeling bad, then whatever. It took me 4 years. I just recently kind of found like a higher power entity, if you will. I was using 12-step programs as my higher power because it was helping me stay clean, and their literature, like that's all I had. I seen other people using it. It worked for them. So, and as I worked those 12 steps, I was able to, have a spiritual journey and find something that really does work for me.
Yeah.
And, that's been a blessing.
Yeah, it's a huge blessing that you're 100% sure. Both my wife and I, we grew up in families that are LDS, right? Of course, we're here in Salt Lake, which that's the majority. It's not, the percent isn't as high as it used to be because so many people from outside has moved in. A couple of years ago, my wife said to me once, she goes, I think you finally figured out the difference between religion and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And when I lost my job because of my cocaine use, it took me a couple weeks. Matter of fact, probably took me longer than that because I fell into some depression for a couple weeks. It took me some time for me to hit my knees and talk to God. I hadn't prayed since I was 13, and that was about the time I got out of the church.
Yeah.
And I remember how embarrassed I was, right? I'm embarrassed to hit my knees and talk to someone I can't even see.
Yeah.
My belief always has been he's there, right?
Yeah.
He or she, however, some people kind of look at it in different ways, just how I look at it. But I tell you what, man, where things have gone, I had someone ask me a question. It was Monday because I was out at a recovery center, a local recovery center, Monday afternoon, talking to the clients there or to the students. And this guy says, if God wouldn't have allowed me to lose my job where I thought I would be at today. And that was such a good question. And I'm like, you know what? I don't know, I'd probably be dead. Even though I was only doing it on the weekend, but I had gained a ton of weight. I mean, I was 198 pounds and I had never ever weighed that my whole life. I had a double chin. I've always been one that stayed physical fit and was working out. I've done that since like high school. And I knew it was probably coming because even the nights I was partying, I'd go into the bathroom and look in the mirror and say, God, please help me because I can't continue. Because I was doing so much cocaine on the weekend. See, 2 days in a row, right? I was doing so much that, and not doing any kind of physical fitness or anything like that, man. All I was doing was harming my body. And yeah, I probably could end up being one of those statistics of not making it.
Yeah. I grew up in a pretty religious family, and I seen my mom be somewhat religious, or she talked about it anyway.
Yeah.
And but she was, talking about God and smoking crack the next day, and it was like, I don't want to be, I don't want nothing to do with that God, and forever I just blamed God, like I don't want to be like all of this, and then all the things in my life leading up to it, and I blamed God for it. And that was, it was just me, my ego, not taking the responsibility for the truth. And the truth was, is I was heading down a bad road, and my higher power, I believe, was trying to tell me, like I say, I used to, the only time I ever prayed was like foxhole prayers, like, oh, please God, don't let these red and blue lights mean prison for me, and then, somewhere along the line, I just, when I surrendered to the, addiction, my whole life started to change around, my life got better, it was almost like I was doing all the wrong, not God, or a higher power. So it's been, the last 4 years have been a spiritual journey for me that has really opened my eyes to life.
Now look what you're doing, Aaron, right? You're holding your hand out like someone did with you, and you mentioned it early in the
Yeah,
show. You're paying it forward. Now you're helping others in their journey, and I I look at people like yourself really as Jesus's disciples in a way, and
yeah,
I don't want to get kind of really freaky religious
right,
type thing, but when he first started going around spreading the word, everyone he picked to be a disciple, his disciples were the imperfect ones, not the perfect ones. It was, one
right,
was a whore, one was a tax collector, and I don't remember what some of the other ones were, but none of them were perfect, which none of us are in the first place. But and
right.
they're the ones that went out to spread the word. Now you have people that are in the recovery community who have seen some pretty bad stuff and had some really bad stuff happen to them. And they've done some really bad stuff, but yet they're out there now making a difference in other people's lives.
Yeah.
During when I was going through your bio, I guess there was a time when you came pretty close to losing your life, or was it your sister?
Um, no, well, I don't remember. I haven't. I should be dead. Um,
Okay.
and my middle sister, I had mentioned, is still out there.
Oh,
She's
okay.
still out there suffering from the disease of addiction or addiction. I'm still trying to figure out if it's a disease or not. I think it's a character defect, but that's a whole nother topic.
Yeah.
But it's yeah. I mean, I've came close to losing my life many a times. There's I I've OD'd a handful of times. And it's just a miserable lifestyle. It really is, and it's really hard to kick, man. My buddy I was talking about, that I'm going to feed his bird. He's talking about he's. I've always wondered, why can't addicts just stop? He's like, I can only drink a little bit. I'm like, not that it's not the same, man. There's a difference between being addicted to something and addiction. Like, or being an addict. I mean, because there's drugs and alcohol that you can be addicted to, but do you have that, what I think is like a character defect, to have addiction, running through the course of your blood? I think that it is the case for me,
Yeah.
because I know people who can have a cup of coffee. Let's take drugs right out of it. I think my brain is wired differently than other people's. You know, um, and it's hard for me to uh, put stuff down sometimes.
Yeah, I got a good friend who was pretty much addicted to everything. Drugs,
Yeah,
alcohol, gambling, sex. I mean, you name it. He said he just, when he got into it, man, he had to go full board and there was no stopping him.
yeah, right. And some people, like I've heard on your podcast before, is some people are addicted to the lifestyle. You
Yeah.
know, I've met people in recovery that are clean, but they're still out there slinging dope. And it's like, what the heck? They want the
Right.
money, they want to be in that lifestyle. And I hope the best for them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's not where I want to be. The first thing I was told in recovery is the first thing you got to change is everything. You know, what you've done so far hasn't worked for you, so let's try this. Change everything. Um, and that's what I did. I was willing. I was broken. When I came into recovery, and I was willing to do anything anyone said. I was at least willing to try it, because I had fully surrendered and accepted I had a problem. And I'm not trying to. I got rid of all my people, places, and things, and started over. And my life got better.
Yeah.
I still love some of those people and some of them places and some of them things, but I got to keep them at a distance. I can't. I can't be out there slinging dope because I'm going to be smoking it.
Yeah. When you said that, basically you've got to start all over. It reminds me, and I'm aging myself. I don't know. I'm sure you've seen these things, but they're called extra sketches. It's a
Yeah.
square and they're red, and you have the
Yep.
two dials, and you can do the thing. And it reminds me of how when you're first kind of learning how to do it, especially when you're just a kid messing around and you've got freaking lines going all over the place, right? They're going every damn direction possible. To me, those who have gotten so deep in their addiction, that's what their life looks like.
Yeah.
And then when they
Yeah, I can
decide
relate.
that, you know what, I'm tired of my life being the way it is and I'm going to make a change. Well, how did you erase the squiggly lines all in the X-sketch? You picked it up and you shook it, right? And it cleaned.
Yep.
You had a full new screen. And then you got to where now you can start doing a straight line, or you could start drawing pictures, right? It wasn't so chaotic anymore. And people don't understand, like you said, they don't understand the addiction. Because I told my wife that I don't know how many times, right? Just freaking stop. It's so simple, because I could go out to dinner and I could have a beer, and then I cannot have a beer for another month.
Right.
Not her.
That's how my wife is.
She had a drink and it's like that vampire tasting blood for the first time. It's like, oh my gosh, that was so good. I got to have another. Oh my gosh, that one was really good. I got to have another one. And people don't realize how deep it goes. And we don't even realize it ourselves, that it's taken our life over, until we wake up one day and realize I've lost everything. Or you wake up in a jail cell, or now you're being sentenced to prison, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I always tell stories to people, man, that, like towards the end of my addiction, or at least drug addiction, I remember driving to the, dope man's house crying, like, please let me stop. Let me stop. I want to stop so bad. And then pull in, pull in and just do it all over again the next morning. Same thing. Please, I just want to stop. And like everything in me wanted to stop. I had a stranglehold on me. And I still was in denial too. So.
Well, and that's exactly what it is, right? We are in denial. Because I've shared that in some of my talks, that I tell myself on Monday, okay, I am not calling my guy on Friday at all. I'm not. Tuesday, I tell myself that. Wednesday, I tell myself that. Thursday, I started playing ping pong. It's like, nope, nope, this is why you need to do it. No, this is not why you need to do it. And Friday would come and I'm like, okay, no way in hell. I've got this. I'm going to do it. And then about noon would hit and I'd be like, yeah, screw this shit.
Yeah. That's why I can relate to it being a thinking problem,
Yeah.
Once I got rid of the drugs, I still was sick, I was still sick. My thoughts still made me sick to my stomach about not using drugs, but, money, other things, and that's where, for me, the 12 steps have helped me kind of lay that down, figure out why am I still sick, and deal with, the past trauma, the past abandonments, all of that stuff. And, so we're still sick, man, I've heard someone say every 13 years you get like 1% bullshit back. Like you're 99% bullshit when you come in here. Every 13 years you have clean, you gain 1% back.
Wow. Well, and it's a lifelong battle for all of us. Just because we have 4 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, it doesn't mean that it's not going to reach up and grab us by the ankles and freaking yank us down again, right? Because it happens. It happens. I've got a friend that I know through the networking community that I go to. He came up to me one day at an event and he goes, "Hey man, I want to show you something and I know you'll really appreciate it." And he reached in his pocket and he handed me his 5-year chip. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is so freaking cool." It was a really good looking
Mhm.
chip and doing like what they do in recovery, and I'm rubbing my good thoughts in it and my love,
Yeah.
and I was so happy for the guy because he started drinking at age 5. He was a full-blown alcoholic by junior high.
Yeah. I
And
can relate.
he has worked his butt off for that 5 years. And I ended up having him on the show. And I can't remember, it took us a while. I think when I booked him, he was about 3 months out before he came on. When he was on the show, he shared that he had relapsed after 5 years. And he was a blackout drunk. So he drank and drank and drank till he was gone. And then when he'd wake up,
Yeah.
he thought he was only out for a couple hours. He was out for a couple days.
Right.
However, he got himself right back up on his feet again and got right back into the community again because he
And
knew
that's
if not, he was in trouble.
Yep. That's where it's at too. Some people suffer with shame and guilt coming back, but it's like relapse doesn't have to be your story, but it's okay if it is. If that's part of your story, that's part of your story. Just
Yeah.
come back. We'll love you no matter what. This is one of the most loving communities I've ever been a part of. That's what helps me stick around, is the love that I never felt growing up. I come to this community and I have a whole family all around the country, especially getting into, some of this networking, Salt Lake City, that's awesome,
Yeah.
and there's people all around this country I can call and, I'm going to Florida at the end of this month to a recovery event, and it's just full, and I'm going with 7 other people in recovery in my area, and we're going down to Florida and it's a recovery event. We get to meet more people, and it's like this is way bigger than my blood family,
Oh,
and
yeah.
we all share the same thing in common, and that's what's great about it.
Well, and you said the key word too, man. It's the love, right? It's the acceptance.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I've got a friend, his name's Manny Lopez. He was on my show. You know, People, if they see him on the outside or see him on the streets, they probably look at him like, oh yeah, he's a gangbanger because he's got the tattoos on his face and on
Yeah.
his neck and different things. And he's such a down to earth guy that has so much love and respect for other individuals. And he's out there busting his butt to help other people in the recovery. He he's a rapper and all his songs are about recovery.
Okay.
And he sent me, I'll have to I think I've got your phone number. I'm pretty sure I do. If not, we'll have to get it. I'll have to send it over to you. I sent it over to Kurt and let him listen to it. But
Yeah, I love listening to music.
he sent me this song and he goes, "Hey man, this is one of my new songs. I want to send it to you and let me know what you think." And he calls himself SL Manny Boy, right? For Salt Lake Manny Boy.
Yeah. Okay.
And the name of the song is Thank You. And I tell you what, I don't care for rap. I'm not a big rap guy. I grew up with the old rock and roll, AC/DC and Kiss and Kansas and Styx and Loverboy and Led Zeppelin and
Right.
all the old good stuff. And when I heard this song, I started getting freaking tears in my eyes. And
Yeah.
I'm like, holy shit, the message that is in this song. And I asked him if I could get his okay to play it next week at our event. And he's like, "You got to be kidding me." And I'm like, I want to play this at the end of my talk because I want to say thank you to the recovery community
Yeah.
because of how they've even helped me, right? I mean, they've
Yeah.
helped me in so many ways to understand more about the addiction. Even though I was an addict myself and didn't admit it until a couple years ago, my journey wasn't like the majority of our guests. My journey was completely different. I didn't go to any rehabs, no detox, just I was done. And I throughout the years when my wife was in the depths of her addiction, there were times, man, I had to call the cops on her and get her out of the house and have some peace. And there was some times I still got some coke and partied by myself here, you know. But it didn't end up still going to the every weekend thing. It was like that one night and then done. However, I just want to say thank you to yourself and so many of the other people out there because you've taught me so much. You taught me how deep the pain was in my wife's journey, how hard it was for her. And I've heard so many stories like yourself where it's like, man, the journey's not easy, but it's definitely damn worth it because my life is so much better right
Oh
now.
man. Yeah. I struggle for words a lot of times when I try to explain to people, especially still out there, but anyone, what this recovery community has given me. Like it's given me life. I should be dead. I should be out there, you know what I mean, still using. Um, I should be I shouldn't even be on this planet, you know. So I mean, it's given me my family, it's given me a house, it's given me business. I owe everything to recovery, you know, and the only thing I can do is keep giving it back. You know, that's what that's all about is
Yeah.
giving it back to the next person. And, you know, I just love it. It's like I said, I struggle for words sometimes when I talk about it because it's like, it's something I've never experienced. The amount of love I have gotten from this community and try to give to the community is like no other, you know. And I'm just forever grateful for recovery.
That's awesome.
And I'm gonna hold on tight to mine as long as I can.
Yeah. Well, Aaron, my gosh, this has been a great show. I appreciate you so much for stepping up to the plate. And I know you go out and talk, you know, it's not like your first time. It is your first podcast, but you're not, oh, what word am I looking for? You're not someone who's not used to going out and sharing their story. And I just appreciate you taking time out of your day to let people know what worked for you and
Yeah,
also even some of the bad parts, right? I mean, when we're in our addiction, there really isn't any good that comes out of it. I mean, we think there is, I mean, other than us getting high, but and of course we
right.
think that's good for us at the time, but it's not, you know. What do you have a message, something that you would think would be powerful for our listeners to know?
Yeah, I think so. My message is that you can do it, you know, and everybody's bottom is different. I tried disqualifying myself out of recovery, you know, because I had never been to rehab. You know, I had never been to an institution. Um, you know, and I thought, well, maybe I'm not, you know, I go into, I talk to people in recovery and they're like, oh, I've been to, you know, so many rehabs and this and that. And it's like, do I not belong here? You know, it's easy to try to disqualify them. And that's part of addiction too. Like I want to disqualify myself so I can go back out. Right.
Right.
But, man, just my messages keep coming back, you know, and just one day at a time, you know, we hear that a lot, but if it takes you 1 second at a time, do that. 1 moment, 1 minute, you know, one day at a time. It's and give yourself a break. You know, it's easy to beat yourself up from all the stuff you've done in your past. You got to give yourself a break. You got to surrender and accept what you've done is what you've done. And, you know, you get clean and you can make amends for those things, you know, that you've done in your past, whether they're direct amends or indirect amends. You know, there's a time to take care of it down the line. The most important thing is that you just stay clean, you know, because life is better on the other side of addiction, you know.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I can't even explain how much better my life has turned around. You know, and I would also say, you know, Kirk kind of touched on it a little bit also. I've suffered from ADHD most of my life, and some other illnesses as well. And just remember to breathe, man. Meditation is a huge part of my story. It's saved my life. It helps me with some like ADHD. It helps me deal with that a lot. Helps me go to sleep at night. And I think you can rewire your brain, through meditation. I think that's a possibility. Um, and I always say this anytime I talk. If there's anybody that needs any kind of help or just someone to talk to, I can leave my phone number in the comment section or whatever. My phone's always available to someone out there suffering from, addiction.
Yeah, those are some great messages and very powerful. And again, I just want to say thank you, Aaron, for everything that you're doing to help other people. And I look up to you. I mean, and I say that in all honesty. I look up to you and Kirk and Jimmy and so many of all our other guests, because you've said it a number of times in this interview. The love and the kindness and the acceptance that the recovery community has is one I have never received from a church, one I have never received from really any other type of group of people that I've been a part of. Now, networking, everyone shows a lot of love and kindness, in networking groups, and we kind of become family, like networking family. But the recovery community family, the stitches are sewn together a lot, not very far apart, right? It's not separated very far. They're so close niched,
yeah,
that they're there to lift a hand, the positivity that comes out of their mouths, the way to look at life. I mean, because we've all destroyed our lives in one way or another, and they know what it's like to rebuild. And they're there to help you from the very first step. So
yeah, another thing I would just say real quick is when I first got into recovery, I felt very alone. My wife had pretty much left me, kicked me out the house. I was stranded. And my whole life I felt alone. And the recovery community said you're never alone, never again, as long as you're in recovery. So for the newer people that might be a couple days, couple months clean, if you feel alone, man, get into recovery, get into communities of recovery. You'll never be alone again.
yeah, that is so true. Another great message. Aaron, again, thank you so much for your time, man. Greatly appreciate it. We want to say thank you to all our listeners, all our guests, our past guests, co-hosts. We're definitely looking forward to find a new studio to get things going again, and we're going to come back bigger and better than we were before. I want to say thank you to all our many sponsors for making all this possible, and gosh, there's just so many thanks to give. Yeah. Big thing I should probably start saying too is I just want to say thank you to the recovery community, right? Because they're making these shows possible, and they're sharing a ton of inspiration and love. So thank you to everyone. Guys, we're going to leave you with this, as we do at the end of every show. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.